Hello, everybody, and welcome back to What's the Story podcast. It's WTS 268, and it's been a minute, but here we are.
Back.
Here we are. My name is Danny Murray.
I'm Graham Merrigan.
Mero, how are you?
Great. It's the latter part of July.
Indeed.
We haven't been seen since I think the end of May. In that time, you've got married. I've been in Bosnia.
You have.
In Ireland. And we've been loving life and enjoying our summer so far.
Indeed, yeah. There's been a lot going on for us, But look, we're at that stage in our life now where like we just do what we want. We don't have to do these every week. We're not some sort of performing monkey for you people.
I got a text. I got a couple of texts to see when we were back. So, people, thanks for making me feel loved.
Yeah.
One of them was cousin Craig, but it doesn't matter.
Every listener is a listener, Graham. Doesn't matter if they're a relative or not.
Exactly.
That's what my ma says to me when she listens to them.
Danny,
I don't think my ma actually listens to this, by the way. So
has she ever listened? My mum doesn't listen either.
I think she went to a live show and that was it.
She did. Fitzpatrick's.
Yeah, I don't think she's actually listened to. The wonderful Fitzpatrick Hotel. Yeah, check them out, lads. Go on if you haven't in a while and you're looking for somewhere nice to stay. Fitzpatrick Castle.
Tell them we sent you.
Do. Sorry, I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say, you got married. I was in Bosnia.
Yeah. And
you had a fairly significant operation as well.
I did, but I'm happy to say the Mickey transplant went well. And,
lovely. So now you have the flute of an elephant, I'm told.
No, I was going to go elephant flute, but I decided that, you know what, that's probably a bit ambitious now. You know, carrying it around with you.
You had the hamster flute as it was, so.
A gerbil one. It was a gerbil flute I had. We've used up our allocation of the word flute now. So
flute, a great word though.
No, I didn't. I had major abdominal surgery, as they would say. I had a partial gastrectomy and a gastric bypass. So yeah.
And how are you feeling?
Feeling good, man. I'm feeling good. The wonderful team in St. Vincent's Hospital and the surgeon Helen Heenan in there looked after me. They were brilliant. I can't complain. Lovely little holiday in Vincent's Inn. Had a lovely room with a view of a golf course, and Wimbledon was on. And yeah. So, but what are we? 3-4 weeks post-op now.
3 weeks and 3 weeks on Monday we were.
There you go. Yeah. So, but yeah, feeling good, recovering well. A little bit dodgy at times, but that's to be expected, all things considered.
And what's dodgy?
Just general things, man. It's weird, like because your plumbing inside you has changed, you know, completely. So
your taps.
Yeah. So it's knowing what tap is going to turn on next, and that kind of thing can be a bit mischievous. And also just trying to generally figure out what your body will tolerate and what it won't tolerate. You know, compared to this time a month ago, for example. Like, you know, like I mean, look, I got married 2 months ago, whatever, just under 2 months ago, and I was living that week. I was living it up, and then the couple of days that we had down in Kilkenny and that kind of thing as well afterwards. Then I mean, like I was eating and drinking like a lord and a king and all sorts. You know.
And were you doing that because you were conscious of the big op?
No, because at this point I didn't actually know when I was going to be having the op. Right. So I knew it was coming because I've been in the process for
tests and stuff.
I've had more tests than I can fucking shake a stick at. Like, but it's, you know, it's a weird one. Like, it's when people hear of a gastric bypass, they assume kind of a cosmetic surgery, or they assume, you know, someone's gone to Turkey or they've gone to Latvia or whatever the case is. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that either. Let's be clear on that. If that's the thing I would say, and the thing that I've been saying to people, kind of like you've been asking me about the surgery and that, and they kind of bring that side of things up, is that nobody gets a gastric bypass as their first resort to, you know, losing weight or to getting healthier or that kind of thing. More often than not, it is a last resort.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people who go down that road, particularly those who go abroad, they're doing it because they're at a point where it's the only way they can do things now. It's the only way that they think they'll be able to get the goals that they're looking to get. And that's fine. That's not what brought me into hospital. There's a whole other thing there, which we'll talk about another time. But I think it's an interesting one that I think people tend to look at these surgeries as kind of like people looking for an easy route or a fast fix kind of thing. And lads, I'm not just saying it because I'm going through it kind of thing, but it's fucking not. Like, I mean, there's there's so many complications and there's so many little things. And even, you know, like post-surgery for a lot of people, you know, it's 4 weeks before they can actually eat something. Other than that, they're just having liquid and like pureed food. Now, thankfully, I haven't had to go through as stringent a pureed food stage as other people and that kind of thing. You know, there's stuff called dumping syndrome, which is your body just basically saying, what you've put in me, I'm not having. And you go into this horrible fucking situation of like diarrhea. You feel like your heart's going to explode out your chest.
Do you have that?
I haven't encountered it yet, thankfully. No, I thought I was going to get.
You've avoided it now, surely, have you?
No, dumping syndrome can be around because, like, if you get your entire plumbing system changed internally, you know what I mean? Like, so basically, what they're bypassing a huge amount of your stomach, they're bypassing part of your small intestine. You know what I mean? And so that lies dormant then. You know what I mean? But the problem then is that you essentially have built, because you've built a bypass. You know what I mean? Think about it in traffic terms. You know what I mean? Beforehand, all the traffic's out in one spot. This bypass is built, and suddenly all the traffic goes around the town. You know,
right?
So it creates a more direct route to the exit, so to speak, which speeds things up astronomically in some cases. And that can be problematic. Like I did have a little bit of, so you're trying to figure out what you can and can't tolerate, for example, when you're eating. I'm probably not doing a good job of explaining this because I'm jumping around a bit, but so I'll give you a perfect example, right? So one of the things I was told I could have was I can have like a little bit of bread as a carbohydrate, right? You're told to prioritize protein, but that I could have, you know, like a half slice of bread or something as getting the carb into me and something that should be easy on my stomach. I ate bread and I was attached to the loo. I mean, attached to it, like. So
you're talking a slice of bread or something?
Half a slice of Brennan's white. Something that beforehand I would have loved now a bit of Brennan's white toasted with a bit of butter on it. You know what I mean? But now that same like a half slice of bread, not even a full slice. And I don't know if it's I've developed a gluten intolerance off the back of it. I don't know if I don't think it is, but I just think it's something that my body at the time was like, no, we can't take this. But it fucks you up then because, you know, you want to get out and about, you're recovering, you should be up, you should be kind of moving and mobile and all that kind of stuff. You want to just get on with life. You want to go, you know, see friends, you want to go to the shops, you want to do that, but you can't because you can't trust your arse. You know what I mean? Like, and that sounds ridiculous, but like
it's mad though. Like I haven't seen you physically since your wedding, and we talk every day via audio notes and taking the piss out or whatever. But I hadn't seen you, and when we logged on today to record this, I was just smiling because I can certainly see a difference in your face already. Your neck, your one of 16 chins is gone.
Delighted they're gone. Hopefully I'll get down to about 12 or 11 chins and I'll be happy.
Joking. But you know what I mean?
I get it.
But
like,
I mean, as well as like it's mad in terms of the context of the podcast, because if you remember, we started the podcast because you were writing blogs about your kind of battle with weight loss and food, your relationship with food, and then we started the podcast to vlog that, to kind of record because that's when we started with Lindsay as well. So now it's mad. 7 years later, we are where we are. Like,
I'm a slow learner. It took me 7 years to figure out what I need.
I'm not saying this battle was going on for 7 years or that it's
I get it.
But I'm just saying it's mad that at the start the podcast was set up for to log your weight loss journey, and then when guests were saying yes, we kind of abandoned.
We learned very quickly that people don't want to hear about us; they want to hear about our guests, which is why we'll move to our guests very quickly, lads. But it is like and I honestly I don't think I would have got to this point without this podcast and without me time with Lindsay as well, because I learned things from that, and I learned, you know, and again, I don't want to go over the top in terms of like, you know, woe was me in terms of what my medical history is and all that kind of stuff. But like, I was getting a certain degree of success with, say, training with Lindsay, or I'd done things like Slimming World, I'd done, you know, that kind of stuff. And I was getting a certain degree of success with it. But then, and it wasn't that I wasn't sticking to the things then and it would go south or would go wrong or whatever. But there were certain, I'd only get a certain element of success with it. And then it would like hit this stall. And that can happen. But the stall then would cause problems for me. And as a result of that, then, you know, there was like I was like, right, something has to be amiss here. You know what I mean? At this point, I feel like I've done everything I can do. Maybe, just maybe there's something. And if there's not, then okay, right, I'm just gonna have to double efforts and I'm gonna have to do something. But anyway, so I went and I got checked and and there was something there. There was issues there. And that's what ultimately led me to the point that I'm at. But like you said, we started this podcast 7 years ago, man. So it was maybe 3 years, 4 years that it took me to go and get that medical help. And then from there, change.
This is where you are now.
And that's it. And it takes time, it does, you know what I mean? But as I said, like once you get into the care, I know people bitch and moan about the hospitals in Ireland and all that kind of thing. And look, wait lists are ridiculous. The fact that it took this many years, but the simple fact I would say is that once you get in and once they know what the issue is, that they work with you and they work with you as best they possibly can. And I can't fault the treatment they got from the team that look after this kind of thing. It's a bit mad that kind of the podcast, in a way, it's like, a bit of a full circle situation now that, because I see, I don't know how much people want to know about this. I don't know how much people don't want to know about this,
but as you said, it's quite common now. This procedure is quite common. So
it is.
You never know who's listening to this,
and that's it.
That's what podcasts are all about. They're about life stories, and we have a steady listenership. That would probably like to know, and you might be even pointing somebody in the right direction.
Well, what I would say there, we'll probably talk about it more, because it's not to be all.
You might get someone professional to talk about it as well.
Yeah, and not to be all philosophical and all that, but it's a bit of a journey. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've had the surgery, but that's not kind of the end point.
You've ever said.
It probably is, to be fair. But like the surgery is kind of, it's almost like the middle point in it, in terms of where things are at. You know what I mean? You get the surgery, and then it's after the surgery, then you've got like a kind of long enough road of what happens after. And that's a whole new lifestyle and all that kind of thing. So look, I mean, just naturally over the next couple of months over with the podcast or whatever, I'm sure this is going to come up, and I'm sure there'll be stuff, but it's not, there's no shame or nothing attached to a surgery like this. And this is the thing that I'd say to people.
And you don't feel down about it?
Not at all. No. And like, as I said, like there are lots of different reasons for getting this surgery. And there's some people, like the type of surgery I had was a full bypass. Other people get like a gastric sleeve, it's called. There's like a mini bypass. So a sleeve is basically where they portion off sort of 90% of your stomach, and with the remainder they make kind of a banana sort of shape, is the only way I can describe it, sleeve. And it creates a smaller stomach, so you can't take in as much. And it, because I didn't get that procedure, I'm not 100%. I don't really know enough about it. But again, this is what I'm saying. If we can do a podcast where we talk about these things, or we can get somebody on and all that. But what I would say to anybody who, I'd say this to anyone first, right? I think there needs to be a bit of a mindset change in Ireland of people who have obesity. And I deliberately use the term have obesity, because we need to treat it more like a disease than we do anything else. You know what I mean? If, like, yes, okay, like there are contributing factors to obesity, and some of it is genetic, some of it, you can't help, some of it is related to issues with things like thyroids or with hormones, stuff like that, and some of it is just from being a bit lazy and eating too much, undeniably. But in the same way that somebody who's smoked for 30 years gets cancer, and yet we do kind of go, well, if they didn't smoke or whatever, but we still say cancer, and we treat cancer as a disease. We don't treat obesity as a disease. And I think there needs to be a mindset change in Ireland where we look at it, because there's a lot of people who have obesity, and these surgeries are going to become more and more and more common as a way of treating it, because a surgical intervention is often what is needed to treat a disease, which is what this is. So what I'd say then is, anyone who maybe is struggling with their weight and has tried all those different things of weight loss and everything else, talk to your GP about it and ask about like the National Weight Management Service, and take a look into these different things and all that. I'm not encouraging anybody to get in an airplane and go abroad without doing proper research and talking to it. There's lots of advice out there. There's lots of groups out there. And if you go to the right places and you go to the right people, and I'd always say start with somebody who's a medical professional first, you will get answers and you'll get a little bit of idea, and you'll know very quickly whether it's something that you want to go and learn more about and possibly pursue, or rather it's not for you, But it's look, I'm glad that ultimately I'm where I'm at the moment, because yeah, it was kind of the only option for me, really. Be fine.
Yeah, and you don't feel like psychologically you don't feel downbeat about the situation. You feel
Oh, not
positive
at all.
because
Yeah, not at
it's
all.
giving you in kind of an extra lease in life.
Yeah, I like it's a weird one. It's kind of I wouldn't say that like it's made me happier, because like it hasn't made me happier, but what it has done is it's given me assurance that, you know, a medical issue has been resolved, if that makes sense. And as a result of that, then I've got a little bit of a boost from it. And don't get me wrong, like I'm delighted with the weight loss aspect of this as well. That's, you know what I mean? For a lot of people, that's the primary output, and you know, that's brilliant. It's kind of like a super happy bonus for me. Like, you know what I mean? The surgery was, as I said, 3 weeks ago or whatever. I'm 20 kilos down, just over 20 kilos down. And since then,
in 3 weeks.
In 3 weeks, do you know what I mean? And
that's 2 stone.
You know,
that's a stone and a bit. It's nearly 2 stone.
I don't know what it is in old money, unfortunately. Yeah, but
old money.
But like, you know what I mean?
I think there's 12 kilos in a stone.
Yeah, geez, yeah. But it's 20 bags of sugar, you know. So, but look, that's, you know, as I said, like that's it's great and all that, and hopefully it leads to a healthier thing, and hopefully then it gets rid of the health issues that were there and that kind of thing. But yeah, I'm sure. Look, if people have questions, they can message me, they can ask me, they can.
The 1 stone is equal to 6.3 kilograms.
So 3 and a bit stone. Then.
Fucking hell! In 3 weeks, you're down a stone a week. Unreal.
Yeah, no, that won't maintain. That's because it's very early days. Like after a while, that'll slow. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we've been waffling for ages.
And is it too private a question? You can edit this out if you want. But
go on.
What stone were you at? What was your heaviest?
My heavy, and it wasn't this pre-surgery. I'd lost weight a little bit pre-surgery, but at my heaviest, I was 212 kilos, which is fucking ginormous. That's 34 stone, maybe, is it?
212. That's 33 stone.
There you go. Yeah, my maths wasn't far off.
So you're 29.3 stone now.
Yeah, so I've still got a long way to go. Like, don't get me wrong.
Don't be mad seeing you like. You're gonna be like just a skinny whippet now.
I don't know about that, man. I don't know.
You might turn your body into Hulk Hogan or something like that from the 90s.
I mean, yeah, if I can get a bit of the vitamin C was on, who knows? You know, but look, yeah.
Well, that's what you were up to for June anyway.
that's my June looked after. Jesus Christ, that's a long intro, man.
I know it's good.
Yeah, look, we'll do a podcast where we talk about it properly. We get an actual expert on. Will we go to our guest?
We will indeed. Who is our guest, Danny?
Absolutely delighted to welcome back Brianna Parkins to the podcast. It's been over a year, and the last time she was on, we said she's a crack merchant, but now she's a fact merchant, would you believe? Fact checking everything that moves. Yeah. Brianna, thanks for coming back and for politely agreeing to talk to us again, even after the last time.
It's good to be back. I'm delighted that you've asked me again. You've asked me on again after the complete shite talk of last year.
That's what this podcast is. It's shite talk.
You know, we probably should change the name to shite talk. Yeah. Like, it's just seven years of shite talk, and we're still trying to, you know, put the myth out there that no, we're a legitimate podcast that talks about legitimate.
You know what though? Like I would say the majority of the podcast industry is based on absolute shite talk, but you guys actually get to points and you're entertaining. Like you ever heard just like some podcasts, and obviously it was like two drunk mates or like they were on the bag and they're like, you know what, we're gas lads, we should make a podcast. And you're like, no, you're awful.
But this is it though.
Funny.
Everybody has a podcast now. Like when we started doing this, it was kind of like a little bit of a novelty, and you'd say like, oh yeah, now we're doing a podcast, and simply, what's that? What's a podcast?
Yeah, and we're 7 years old this last month.
And now it's, you know, as you said, anyone who has the fucking slightest bit of technology around them, we're doing a podcast now. It's like, yep, all right, welcome to the club. We're all at it.
I was asked to like, would you have your own podcast? And I floated it to my dad, and he's like, you have to call it Every Bastard Has a Podcast.
Brilliant.
Like, thanks, Dad. Thanks for backing me there.
I mean, in fairness, it's a catchy name. Yeah, you know. And I mean, the fact that Jordan Peterson has a podcast, definitely the bastard bit fits. You know?
He has a podcast.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, doesn't he? If not, I just feel like I see nothing but clips of Jordan Peterson speaking on podcasts.
Him
And I figured,
and Andrew Tate at the minute.
Yeah.
Like, you know, speaking of him and fact checks, right? It's just
yes,
the
yes,
rise
here we go.
Yes.
of Andrew Tate is actually a case study. Like no, he doesn't have a TikTok account, right? And somehow he's just infiltrated all our feeds, and it's all like Andrew Tate fans. I think they're potentially just bot accounts that just flood him, and he's always like on a podcast, but you never find what this show actually is. And it's like Andrew Tate Rex feminist. It's a real astroturf, which is like, you know, a fake grassroots campaign to push him across as this sort of internet guru who's going to teach you how to get money and get bitches. There's still some really disturbing human trafficking. There was a human trafficking arrest in Romania. It's just, there's some big questions around this man and his legitimacy and how much money he pretends to have, or he might projects to have, sorry is a better word. I think it's a really interesting one, given that people are really, I think particularly young men are looking up to him as like, oh my God, you know, he has this amazing lifestyle, he has all the women and all the money, and this is how I need to achieve it. There's kind of, question marks around that family and their finances.
I'm delighted I don't know who Andrew Tate is.
Good.
Yeah, I've only I don't do TikTok because I feel like I'm too old, and if I do TikTok, I'm trying to be younger than I am. But then all I do is watch Instagram reels, which are basically taken from TikTok. But in my head, I'm not on TikTok, so I'm not trying to be cool. I'm just, you know what I mean? But because of that, I've seen this Tate fella.
I love TikTok. I think, it's for me, I'm like, Instagram's like about looking good. And then TikTok is just like pure unhinged people telling like funny stories about their trauma. There's really good mental health content on there if you get on the right side of things. And it's so, again, it's actually scary how much it's able to access, I think, a microphone, because you'll be having a verbal conversation with someone and then you will see videos almost pop up like an hour later about that topic. So there's big questions around how much data it's harvesting, but it is so tailored that you do get really good content matched to you. But on the flip side, it creates this thing called filter bubbles, which we knew Google was doing. I mean, I studied filter bubbles at uni in 2009. So this has been going on for more than 10 years, right? And there was this great example of like during the Arab Spring, if you're really into politics and you Googled Egypt, you would get stuff around the Arab Spring and Tahrir Square and what was happening politically. If you weren't and you Googled Egypt, you'd get like, this is the best places to go snorkeling and to visit the pyramids. So we knew that Google was already kind of creating little bubbles for us, depending on what we were interested in. And if you stay in that little bubble, you don't necessarily get things that challenge your worldview. And it all just seems like everything's confirming that what you know is what you know, and this is right, and no one's disagreeing with you, and it just tunnels you further down into the hole. And there's kind of been arguments around people getting into more conspiracies because of the internet, and it's like, well, no, conspiracy sort of theories or alternate beliefs have always been there, like, David Icke, lizard people, the moon landing, all those kinds of things have already been there. But I think the internet can funnel you down like maybe a deeper, darker hole. And it also means you connect with other people, because a lot of times people who, believe misleading things, they're quite lonely and they don't fit in. And then they find a community that thinks like them, or, they make friends on the internet, and then all of a sudden they've got a community based around a shared interest. So it can be more of a social thing,
It's mad you're saying that, because sorry, Mero, I was just going to say, it's mad. And this will show we're rusty because we haven't done one of these in a few weeks. But a couple of months ago, we spoke to the guy that done the Finding Q podcast about QAnon. And he was saying that exact thing, that when he went to America and he was talking to these people, more often than not, it wasn't necessarily that they like believed deeply in Q, or they, had this overwhelming urge to follow every bit of nonsense that came out of Q. But it was more so, it was the pandemic and I was bored at home. I was all by myself and I was just talking to people. And well, here I am protesting outside the Capitol building on the 6th of January or whatever it was. It was like they found somebody that they attached to. And then because of that, they just went with the flow, as opposed to actually stopping and saying, hang on, this is a bit batshit crazy, isn't it, lads? Can we not just go for a pint or something? This is a bit mad. Like, it's just rabbit holes.
That's the problem. We couldn't go for a point.
Well, a fair point. Well made. Yeah. But yeah, rabbit holes.
But how did, like, I understand that fits that the profile of a conspiracy theorist prior to the pandemic, but the profile expanded throughout the pandemic. Like what I saw on my social media timelines particularly was gym owners and nutritionists and yoga experts and all these self-help people that would have an influence on normal Joe Soaps, because they're helping them with their food lifestyle and their exercise and stuff like that. Where the hell did that come from? Was that because it was basically loss of income and they were taking it out on somebody?
Yeah, I mean, that could be one side of the story. There's a few things at play, and there's been, I could go on all day about, there's an intersection between the wellness industry. People have talked about the wellness industry and also internal racism as well, and kind of there's a white pride element to some parts of the wellness industry. But the part that you're talking about there is, I noticed that a lot in Australia. So there is there always has been really resistance towards vaccines. So you will see in certain parts of my home state, the Northern Rivers around Byron. I don't know if you've seen Byron Bays on Netflix.
I've watched it, yeah, only because I love Byron Bay.
So I thought it was a parody, and I was like, oh my God, it's really funny. It's not, it's a reality. But people like that do exist. And I forgot how much Australians are like this in a way. And it's sort of this thing of like, I said this is a very blistering hot take, but it's sort of almost that Margaret Thatcher neoliberalism of like, you are responsible for your destiny. Okay, it's up to you to go out, forget the external forces, right? If you want to be healthy, don't eat plastics. If you want to not get cancer, don't use microwaves. If you don't want your children to have autism, don't get vaccines. And it's very easy to judge these people off the bat and be frustrated by them and think like, you're idiots. But you have to understand that a lot of these beliefs come from fear. And we saw that during the pandemic about COVID not being real. We didn't know what COVID was. It was very scary. People likened it to the AIDS crisis, in the 80s and 90s, where people were just getting sick and no one knew what was happening. So people freaked out. It's this big unknown thing. Anyone could be struck down. It's really scary. So sometimes people find it easier to believe that thing didn't exist, or that thing only affected in the HIV, or only affects the queer community. I'm safe. So for people, when it comes to COVID, was like, COVID isn't real, or with the wellness industry of, I'm not going to get vaccines, I'm just going to eat really well and I'll be safe, I'll be protected. And when you look at sort of like 5G people or plastics give you cancer people, it's, if I do this thing, I won't get cancer. And we know that cancer is a really cruel disease. You could not smoke, live healthily your whole life and still get a really aggressive form of terminal cancer in your old age. And that's terrifying, knowing that you have no control over that, and that could just happen to anyone and anyone that you love. So I think those people in the wellness industry, they're trying to like exert control again by saying, if I stay away from these things, then I will be safe, my children will be safe, and things are going to be okay. I think it's a way of trying to, put some control over an uncontrollable situation.
That's it, yeah. Put some control on an uncontrollable situation.
I think you're right, though. I think that people were like, I want to open my gym, or I saw hair salons particularly.
Yeah.
It was like a lip filler clinic. Obviously, revenue might have been an issue in there as well. And, pushing up your social media following. I do notice some people, particularly maybe US kind of, I would say like alternative, I don't want like using the word conspiracy theorist, but alternative kind of flat earthy kind of people, maybe pushing these health beliefs because they want to grow their platform. And you see them jumping from thing to thing to thing. Like one week they're a nutrition expert, and the next minute they're talking about flat earth, the next minute they're talking about ivermectin. So you can see there that might just be a bit of audience building. But I do think in the health and fitness industry, there could be an overlap between that and dodgy science beliefs.
Definitely. And I saw like throughout all this the last 2 years as well, like, you'd see people who were quite vocal on social media, but not about alternative opinions about things. It was just, they would use their social media every day, whether to put a picture up of their dinner, whether to put a picture up of good scenery. And then they went down this route of anti-vax and stuff like that. And the pandemic took a lot of these people, and some of them might have just disappeared under a rock since we have gone back to relative normality, although COVID is still there. But I've seen one or two now that have jumped onto the Ukraine war, the invasion of Ukraine. And particularly recently, I saw somebody. Now, I saw them, they were like, they're good people because I know them. And which is also a bit of a shame when you see, and you're kind of like, why are you putting this, like, and they're attracting so much attention from so much interaction, so much likes, so much shares, but questioning why hotels are still taking bookings on booking.com during an invasion. And if these hotels are still available, why are we getting refugees? And then, you know, it jumps then to the refugee question. Then it jumps to, oh, how's Ireland? How's our own before them? You know, and it's an everlasting shy hole.
You're 100% on that. And we're actually working. It's funny you mentioned that claim that I know that post you're talking about where it was like, I can book this hotel in Odessa for 30 nights. And why is this hotel not housing people? I actually just sent off a fact check then for editing about this. And the area that hotel is located in, like a hotel was destroyed 15 minutes up the road during the start of the invasion, and there's still landmines washing up on the beach. The Ukraine government and the Russian government are putting landmines into the Black Sea to deter the other side from coming near them. So that's why the beaches are closed. So it's not the safest place. People are still looking for accommodation in Ireland, but you can see how that grew. And I kind of had a heads up being Australian. Because I've seen the refugee question play out in Australia. Like everyone, we have I didn't realize this until I moved. It's like, yeah, you guys are mad racist. Like you offshore all your refugees. You don't treat people with kindness and dignity. And I was like, oh, I have to actually think about this, because it was just such a normal part of, you know, you were told that people who were coming by boat were trying to skip the queue and all this kind of stuff growing up. Of course, you know, that's not the opinion of all Australians. There are lots of people who advocate for that system to be closed. But we had a constant sort of steady stream at one point of people trying to access Australia by boat, with people coming, flying in, overstaying visas, that kind of thing. And it was always the communities where you saw that kind of right wing, not even right wing, but that kind of fear of, we don't have enough for ourselves, and now people are going to come in and they're going to take that away, the very meager resources that we already have. Things like, you know, good manual labor jobs that pay well, housing, even things like water, like Sydney's running out of water. And it's like, why are we taking more people? It's getting harder for people who are to live here. It's getting more expensive. We've had a housing crisis for God, more than 10 years. The average house price is about 800,000 euros now in Sydney. And we're talking like houses like an hour and a half out of the city centre. Like I could never afford to live where my parents live anymore. And that's not a nice suburb. That's it. I've just given up. So you understand that when you get a scarcity of resources, people are like, well, why are you inviting more people into, I now have to share this resource. And you find it's the people, you know, and I always used to get quite annoyed with my colleagues investigating this, like, oh, it's bogans, which is like, I don't know what the word equivalent is, generally working class white people. They're just racist. I'm like, no, these communities have actually seen, you know, well-paying jobs decline. They can't live near their parents anymore. They're getting pushed further and further to the fringes. Their kids can't get into schools. The hospitals are overcrowded. They're affected by not having enough resources. I live with it on a daily basis. So there's this inbuilt fear that I'm going to have to now share again and divide again. While rich people who get, you know, a lot of money from migration and people coming into the country, they're fine living in their nice houses, sending their kids to private schools. So I had an idea that this might happen. You know, we have a housing crisis. People are homeless. You know, I, as a very middle-class professional now, can't buy a house. So I can just imagine the struggles that everyone else is in, and people living, you know, three generations in a house. They can't move out of their mum's house, and they have their kids living in there. And then they're seeing Ukrainian refugees coming into the country and being offered houses when they've been on the waiting list for 10 years. You can understand where that annoyance comes from, and it's real. And I don't think that we should demonize those people and write them off straight away as like, oh, conspiracy theorists, racists. There's obviously an underlying need there that can be exploited by right-wing groups if they want to go down that nationalist path. But I remember being on radio when this first started happening, and I was like, I'm afraid that Ireland might turn in the same way that Australians might turn. And we're seeing that now with the government turning around and going, maybe actually we need to put some controls in to to stem the tide, which is really interesting because at the beginning of the conflict, it's like, no, we're Irish. Everyone's going to come here. That's part of our national identity. But now it's sort of been like, oh, actually, can we house these people? Can we look after these people? Can we look after our own? So, yeah, I kind of was waiting for this moment.
It's mad though, because like, and I think Micheál Martin kind of indirectly referenced it from Japan when he was asked about that. And it's kind of this knock-on effect and this idea of the UK's approach to asylum seekers and this whole thing of, you're going on a plane to Rwanda, and how that's kind of influencing people not seeking refuge in the UK anymore, but sort of saying, where else can I go? And Ireland is the next door neighbour, and it's kind of picking up some of the brunt of that. Now, look, I don't know how many or what how true or how reflective of reality that is or whatever, but it certainly seems like a very convenient line in terms of like, well, which would you rather, Rwanda or Ireland? And with the greatest respect to Rwanda, people who are fleeing somewhere poxy are probably going to say Ireland. So it's, I don't know how I feel about the whole thing of like them, for want of a better term, kind of putting a lid on this now, or trying to put a lid on this now. It's kind of like you've had this open policy and now you're trying to roll back on it, and it's a hard thing to do. Like,
yeah, and you've got like a sort of two sort of systems. You've got Ukrainians coming in on a different visa process, and then you have people coming in from other countries who are having to go to direct provision instead. So you've already kind of created a two-tier system, and then we've seen asylum seeker groups complaining that that's creating racism, and they feel very visibly that Ukrainian refugees are being treated differently to them. And it's really interesting to watch Ireland grapple with this, because traditionally people have left Ireland. It's exported people, hasn't been a source of a lot of migration. I know there's sort of Eastern European and Brazilian migration. That's been there for a while, but that kind of mass migration of this is the country we're going to go to make money, because Ireland didn't have a lot of jobs for a long time. It's interesting to see them now reverse their position identity from we're a nation of immigrants to, we need to accommodate people here.
And it's crazy as well, because there's a lot of like people who are in their early 20s, if social media is to be believed, and that's a massive caveat to put on that. But there's a lot of people in their 20s who are kind of talking about how they have to get out of here. There's nothing for them anymore. So you've got this weird kind of two-way travel here. Like,
I get probably maybe 3 DMs a week from Irish people being like, I want to move to Australia. Should I move to Sydney? What are the pros and cons? Is it actually as good as it say, it is? And it's really difficult to answer, because, you don't want someone to move there and hate it. But like, my family didn't have a choice. Like, we talk about economic migrants, which is a term that really pisses me off, because it's like, they just left because they wanted more money. My family were economic refugees. Get this right. Like, they moved from Ireland, in the 70s because there were no jobs. My grandparents and my mum are inner city jobs. They do not have education. There was no work in factories. There was no good paying jobs. They were denied access to university. They didn't have anyone who worked in their family who could get them a job in the civil service. That was it. It was England or Australia, and off you went. And they went for 10 years and then didn't see their family for 10 years. They lost parents over there. They just didn't get to come back. And like, my granny landed up in the middle of Sydney in the heat. It was a heat wave. It was the middle of summer. And like, my granddad went off to factories, and she had no one. She knew no one. She had no one to help raise 4 kids. She didn't know what a spider was. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not a choice. And, it's Irish immigrants to Australia still face that difficulty, getting started. And it's just sad that immigration's always been a safety valve for when things go wrong.
Exactly. And it's the system as well that's failing. If you have a couple, an unmarried couple with 3 kids, and they've been on the housing list for 10 years, and they're sharing with their in-laws, they have to get up at 7 a.m, go over to one of the in-laws till they all go to work, then they leave to go to the other in-laws for the evening, and they've been, as I said, they've been on the housing list for years, and then they see this. They're I agree with you. They don't come from a racist kind of psyche, but that's what the right wing then, in my opinion, that's the likes of Gript and stuff who always entice that kind of they're always adding stuff to those articles, and then they share, and then you're seeing online, and you're seeing that example of that family, and they're sharing an article, and you're kind of going, no, don't share that. I understand your predicament, and I empathize with you, but that's where the government is failing, because we should be in a system where our own citizens are catered for, as well as helping people out, but what they're seeing is, and what they're being told is, that these thousands of people coming from a war-torn country are just after getting a 3-bedroom house in Gormanstown or whatever, just for an example. So I can understand the frustration there, and I think it's a failure of the system.
Yeah, I mean, like, no comment on the Grip remark, because we've worked on them before, and we've talked with them, we've fact checked their stuff before, and they've been in discussions with us, same as what's the other one? The brain just stopped working. The
Liberal.
Yes, we've asked them to correct things, and in fairness, when we've applied fact checks the last time, they did correct the article. So it's very difficult, because no system is perfect, right? Like, no one looks after everyone and is able to take in refugees. Like, you look at some of the Scandi countries, they're very strict on who comes into the country, and they would be providing some of the best systems for their citizens. There's a really kind of sense of like, no, this is us, but we see that as ungenerous. So it's kind of whatever country determines whatever its priorities are, in a way. But yeah, it's heartbreaking. I look at Ireland, and I just think, given the education here, and I think everyone's more sensible. Like, if you ever look at Australian media, there's a clear right wing, a clear left wing, and then there's, like, in the middle, there's independent publishers. The ABC, I think, is fantastic, does a great job. But there's a lot of culture war stuff, and there's issues that get picked up all the time: immigration, refugees, trans health, anything that can be sort of used to go, well, you're either a snowflake, bleeding heart lefty, or you're a cold-hearted right-wing, boomer kind of person. And then that's it, you pick your camp, and there's no sort of middle ground. And I feel like in Ireland, I think we have too much cop on for that. Like, if you see a headline, you're like, here. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's none of that kind of alarmist headline.
Do you think we're getting like that, though? Because do you think we're just living in an echo chamber where we just see the odd, where we're
an echo
chamber, and the demographic that we're
in the echo chamber, we're all going around with Eamon Ryan planting stuff on our windows.
Echo chamber. I saw what you were doing.
Exactly.
I just like giving them guff. Don't be defending them. I like giving them guff.
But we're basing our opinions sometimes on the demographic that we see on our Twitter timelines. So I mean, I would hope that we don't, because I lived in Australia a couple of years ago, and I did see that kind of culture war play out, and you'd see it on the news at 6 o'clock. Like, you'd see Indian students being hit with aerosol and lighters after university in Sydney, and you wouldn't. I'm not saying it doesn't happen in Ireland, because we know it does. But do you think that would play out in Ireland?
I've been here 4 years, and I can't say I've seen an increase in that kind of stuff. So occasionally you see, like, not even right wing, you just see sort of maybe radio hosts or, people on the sort of panel shows say quite I guess, maybe a stirring opinion that gets people going. But even then, it's like, it's still what I consider, like, very tame compared to what I grew up with. Like, there was an actual radio host who got charged with inciting a race riot when I was a kid. So I think Ireland, thankfully, is...
We don't have that. We don't have Joe Duffy doing that just yet.
No. And I know that people give, there's been issues around the recent episode on trans health.
Yeah.
And but I think Ireland is a little bit more sensible, but I also don't understand, seem to be definitely in a more educated nation. People tend to, like, I don't know any Australian friend of mine who has a master's, we tend to go off to work. Not even that many of us, people that I would know would even have gone to uni. And that doesn't mean anything. Like education is, doesn't, just because you can afford to get an education doesn't make you smarter than anyone else. But I feel like, Ireland just seems to have a lot going for it. But in terms of governing health and housing and those basic things, I'm like, you lads should be doing better than us. Like, what's this about? Like, I can't get my head around that,
Yeah. Is this kind of where that whole thing of the information war comes into it as well, though? Because like that, as you were saying, there's, let's say there's some media outlets, and I'm using that term loosely, I suppose, but they almost look to capitalize on these kind of things. Like you were saying, kind of, Mero, it's that point around somebody who maybe, and possibly legitimately, genuinely feels a little bit hard done by when they look at a situation and they're like, fucking hell, like that they're, pulling their hair out, stressing over the fact that they're doing everything they can. They're doing everything the right way as they see it to get a gaff or whatever. And then something like this happens, which is it's not in anybody's control. It's not like anybody asked for this to happen. But then those news agencies or those commentators come along and they see a frustration maybe, and they just start to pick at that a little bit. And that pulls people into this kind of weird web of disinformation that seems very, very real and can seem, you read it at first and you go, oh, fuck. But then, beneath the surface is a whole current of madness. Like,
well, it's like the conspiracy theorists throughout the pandemic, because Danny, you I can't remember the correct kind of terminology you said it, but you said it perfect in regards to, when we were teenagers in our 20s and stuff like that, we would find ourselves reading an article on Wikipedia, then you'd be on another link, and before you know it, you've read about 10 or 12 alternative fact stuff, and you're laughing at it. But these people throughout the course of the last 2 years were taking it as, oh, well, what if that's true? Like the Great Reset, what if that's true? Cashless society, what if that's true?
AIB haven't helped that, have they?
No, but like that's what I mean. AIB then do that with their 70 branches.
Who needs cash, Graham? Who's using cash in this day and age?
I agree. I don't use cash, but I'm just saying.
Not that I can get takeaways anymore, but like I literally only would have a couple of quid on me just to tip a delivery driver kind of thing. I can't remember the last time I actually handed cash over in a shop.
Yeah, well, Just Eat takes off €4 for your delivery, so.
And you still don't tip?
If I have change, I'll tip.
We'll have a chat about that, Graham.
No, but my point is, people years ago, like in
I know what you mean. The conspiracy theories used to be something that you'd have a chat about, and you'd be kind of almost laughing about it and being like, did you see that one about 9/11? The passport landed on the ground.
That you would enjoy reading them. You would enjoy.
It was a form of
watching
entertainment.
Documentaries. Almost. You would enjoy at the end of it going, geez, that was gas, and not thinking about it again. These people now have formulated their personalities based on these ridiculous out there questions about flat Earth and about the moon landing and about climate change. Do you know, I mean, what more do you need to know about climate change in the last fucking 10 days? Like, did you see the Daily Mail article or the front page of the Daily Mail? Sorry for bringing up that rag, but at the front page, it basically said, carry on and enjoy ourselves one day about the sun. And then the second day it was Britain is burning.
I didn't see it now, but
Richard Chambers put it up on his Twitter page. The Daily Express as well. It was one article on the front page basically saying, just get over it. It's a nice bit of weather. We have it in Spain type attitude. And then the next day, the front page was Britain is burning and bushfires and houses going on fire because it's too warm. Those types of publications are not helping this culture war.
I mean, I think it's all publication. You have your news meeting at 2 p.m. In places that I worked, and you go, what's gonna be the front? What's gonna sell the most pages? What's gonna be our splash? And that's it. Some newspapers do take a line on stuff, and I don't necessarily think that's always helpful, because then it's like, this is how I feel about this issue, and we're going to shoehorn all our stories into that. So I kind of actually respect the, oh no, I know that yesterday it was fun, but now things have caught fire, so now we're all going to have that story.
Yeah.
I almost kind of respect the coming up and seeing what's happened that day line to be a bit more honest or authentic than trying to shoehorn everything into one line. But yeah, it's really interesting. I remember seeing a post and it was like, this will be your coldest summer, and I was like, oh good, yeah, this summer was really cold, and I was like, oh no, this is a post about global warming. We didn't have a very good summer in Ireland, and I was like, oh, I thought it was like, we had this thing in Australia, we were in La Nina or El Nino, and this depends on
El Nino,
dipole, right? So it switches, like, we've had 10 years of drought at one stage, and then this thing switches over, and then we get loads of rain. So we're kind of being like, what's next summer going to be like? And normally we know by now what our bushfire season, our summer is going to be like. So it's going to be rainy for us again. So we're kind of used to these weather extremes, without thinking, it's global, it's climate change. We talked about this in the bushfires a couple of years ago that were very bad. Was it climate change? Was it actually policies against climate change just meant people couldn't chop down trees? And there's loads of fuel then for bushfires. So it's constantly argued climate change is one of those things, and it gets kicked around, and people are the victims in the end of the day, and let's come up with good policies.
When you're looking at these things for fact checking, like, and wait, I'm going to shift gear a little bit here, and if you don't mind me doing so, because you wrote an article in the Irish Times earlier this year about you being neurodivergent and ADHD, and how.
Sorry, just to cut across it, but those articles in the Irish Times were my life every week.
They were brilliant. They were absolutely brilliant.
I text Eva a lot of the time after them and saying, these are just brilliant. Yeah. Sorry, Danny.
No, you're all right. I really enjoyed them. I completely agree with you. I think one of them that I just laughed at over and over again was your trip to the beach, which was gold. Yeah. But in the one where you talked about ADHD and neurodiversity, and you referenced the fact that there's all these things, but then one of the advantages is this fact checking stuff. So like. Yeah. When something comes across your desk for a fact check article or whatever, you're in the journal towers or whatever it is, and this stuff comes across, like, what is your first port of call with it? Like, where does your head go to go, all right, I'm getting stuck into this now?
Yeah, I'm glad you really enjoyed the Irish Times articles. The only reason I had to stop them was because I took the job at the Journal. They were very kind and said, you can finish up. I only had like a 6-month contract with the Times, and then the Times said, can you stay on? We like you. But the Journal were like, no, we're now paying you full time. We gave you till January, which is very kind of them. So that was the only reason I've left writing columns was to concentrate full time on fact check work. But yeah, it's a blessing and a curse sometimes, because I think I can go too deep maybe on one thing, and then I'm like down the rabbit hole, but there's like maybe 3 or 4 fact checks that'll come up in the meantime that might have been better, but now I'm too deep into this one thing. So I've just been looking the past week around Airbnb regulations. So we're bringing in tighter rules in Ireland, basically around Airbnb, because there's a belief, and the research does back this up, that when an Airbnb comes into the market, it pushes up rent and it decreases housing stock, because people are taking them off long-term housing because you can get more money. You can charge like 200 quid a night. Why would you be charging 1,000 a month? Yeah. So I went down that rabbit hole. And then what happens is, because I think I am neurodivergent, and I worked in a job called Media Watch, where I would investigate journalists, and you had to be so correct all the time, because when you're the person calling out people, you can't let anything slip. And also they're going to come back and attack you. So you're always writing this piece trying to be like, what's their argument going to be against what I've just said? And did I have everything in the line? And have I read every single study that I possibly could have? Is there anything in the peer-reviewed stuff that says a study, maybe had too much of a small size, or maybe the data was skewed? So I could do that for like 3 or 4 days. And it's exhausting, because you're always coming from a place of anxiety of, have I missed something? Did I get this right? Because I'm a fact checker. So the penalty for me getting things wrong, and journalists get things wrong, where we're humans, and the industry, we're doing more with less than any other journalist in history has ever had. Newsrooms have shrunk down. Sub-editors have gone, shrunk as well. So you're often editing your own work to a higher standard. So I find that I really enjoy this type of work, really doing either investigative stuff or fact-checking stuff where I can kind of just go off and go down that hole. It depends. I do also enjoy breaking news as well. But what I don't enjoy necessarily is having to pump out 4 stories a day, having to change between different stories. That for me, I find it really stressful. But I still find this work stressful, even though it kind of activates my hyper-focused superpower, because then I put a lot of pressure on myself to get things right. And I think also I've been reading a lot about, I got diagnosed later in life, and a lot of people who grow up with some form of neurodivergence, either autism or OCD or anything on the scale, ADHD, there's a lot of trauma there because you've spent your life masking. And you knew that maybe there's something wrong with you, but you internalize it as, I'm lazy, I make silly mistakes, I make spelling mistakes, I'm not attentive to the small things. I got the big things right, but I've spelled something wrong, or I've got someone's name wrong, and I find it really difficult to concentrate on those nitty-gritty things. So you just always have this anxiety that you're going to fuck up again. So you're almost working overtime and trying to prove to yourself and to other people, like, oh, they're going to know that I was really slow with that article because I read 18 studies and maybe one of them will do. So you always have that kind of chatter going on in the background, but sometimes it is useful in a fact-checking or an investigative context, because this thing called red teaming, we don't do it so much at the Journal because we don't really have the staffing capabilities, and there's other reasons around that. But at the ABC, you would get a colleague to go through your script for a story that you're working on, and they would try and pick it apart and try and look for mistakes and try and attack it.
There's a great scene in the TV show The Newsroom, that example. Yeah. It's
a really common practice. It's what newsrooms should be doing on investigative pieces, and I'm sure they do. We do it at the Journal. I have an editor to check over, but I don't have a whole team. But I am really good at doing it to myself. But it's self-critical, and it's very hard to switch that off after work. And then you go to the pub with your friends, and then you're lying in bed later being like, why did I do that? Say that weird thing. Do that. Why did I laugh that way? Do you know? So it's good in a professional context sometimes. And then some days I'm burnt out. After the Ukraine war, I was really burnt out because you're just taking on streams of information all the time. And, fact checkers, we were looking at pictures of dead bodies, trying to decide whether they were real or whether they were actors, stuff like that, Okay. So, it can be, it's a blessing and a curse, I would say, but it does help me do this kind of work. It suits my brain.
The Ukraine stuff, we couldn't even begin to scratch the surface in terms of how much is out there. And as I said, you've been looking at it now since February, when Russia invaded and that kind of thing. But that kind of thing, that's very flippant when you're talking about like a fucking, a superpower invading a neighbor, that kind of thing. Fucking hell. But it's, when you were talking about that and you were saying like you're trying to cipher rather, no, this one's legit, or no, this is absolute nonsense, and here's proof that it was used 6 years ago in this other thing that happened, and all this kind of stuff. Like, and particularly for you, but with the whole neurodiversity thing, is it a case of being able to switch it off, or is it a case where it's almost always on until you say, no, I need to put this away now, I can't.
Yeah, that's one of the things that most people don't understand about ADHD, is that it's not that people with it can't focus, it's that it's unregulated focus. So either the switch is on, the switch is off. There's no like, I have to do this thing, I'll just get it done quickly so I can move on with my life. There's none of that. It's either like a fuck yes or a fuck no. It's really difficult to do like menial tasks. Like for me, we track this information with EDMO, which is a group of us at DCU, University of Sheffield, and we have like a shared document where we track accounts and we see who's got different accounts and what we should be monitoring for. And I find filling in that spreadsheet really tedious. So I have to make myself do it. But it is difficult to turn the laptop off, and there's always this fear that, I've missed something. So I had to offload Telegram off my phone last night because I was just spending hours on it after work. And it's not great for your mental health to be in those spaces fade
You have
out.
to join certain groups for that, Brianna.
Yeah, I would be a member. I have, accounts across Facebook and Telegram and other platforms that I would, join groups and just sort of, not in like a way to kind of like expose, this person posted this. It's more to get a feel of what's out there. Is this got shared, but who's interacting with it? And did it migrate to another platform? And now we have to look at debunking it. So it's a healthy monitoring tool.
You also posted about your hatred of LinkedIn, which I fully support and embrace. It is an absolute cesspit. I can't stand it.
What is that?
LinkedIn.
Oh, yeah.
No. If I said that I'd rather drink a cup. If I'd happily drink a cup of my cold sick if I never had to take it. It's just when you go on there and you see people like, oh, I've got a new job, or, today I had an excellent call with the manager, and then, I gave a $5 to a homeless person, and it's like, is that what I should be doing?
Yeah,
is that
it's
what we all need to do now to get hired. Like,
even the comments under someone leaving a company, I do be always. I'm on LinkedIn maybe once a year, out of a notification or something that I might get, but I'm always forced. I always have my Twitter head on me because I take the piss out of Twitter. Don't take it serious at all. Like, and I'm like, oh no, I can't say that. It's LinkedIn. I'll get them in trouble.
There's a lot of posts on LinkedIn that I think, people would be a lot better just closing their bedroom door with a box of tissues if they want that kind of self-gratification. It's outrageous, the stuff they'll post. Like, it's that one, I love that. Like, I was 10 minutes late for a job interview and I didn't get it, and here's why. On the way, I met a homeless kitten, and that kitten looked distressed, so I decided
Is that on LinkedIn, is it?
Yeah, man, people posting their fucking nonsense about saving a kitten from a tree on the way to a job interview, so they didn't get the job, but then some animal lover discovered it, so they gave them a multi-million contract, and now they're living in fucking Hawaii drinking nothing but champagne. It's mad shit on LinkedIn, man.
It's just like people post. I was using it to try and find an expert today, and I was like, trying to find their work history so I can ring them up and go, hey, is this thing legit or not? LinkedIn's great for that, but it was just looking at people's posts and their other journalists, and it's like, I published this article and I entered this award, and I was like, should I be celebrating this small win? Like,
small win.
I could win the Nobel Peace Prize, and I just would be like, oh god, I can't post that because people think I'm a dickhead. Like, maybe it's just me and my self-esteem issues.
No, I get it.
But I'm like, is this what we all have to do now to get a job?
We got an email about 6 months ago looking to go put our name forward for the Podcast Irish Awards or something like that. So we clicked like we opened up to have a nose. They were looking for a fee off us for like €200 for us to be nominating.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, and then you probably have to fork out to sit at a table and eat a dinner and listen to Ivan Yates MC an event that you don't want to be at.
Exactly.
Or whatever Ivan's doing these days. Much love to Ivan Yates.
He's helping Fianna Fáil, isn't he?
Is that what he's doing now? Is he?
I don't know. I just hope he's having a nice break.
Yeah.
I just hope it. I kind of love that. He's like, I'm done now. The court case is finished, and I'm pissing off 2 years later. I'm going to go live my life. I'm like,
again, you got to respect that. He's
an advisor for Fianna Fáil, though, I thought.
Is he? That's smart considering he's a Fine Gael minister back in the day, wasn't
he? Yeah, I know, yeah.
That look, I mean, they're all the one. I don't know. Twitter is at it as well. I don't know if it's because, again, like you were saying at the start, Brianna, that whole thing of like, the algorithms, they put stuff in front of you that it thinks you want to see. And I don't know why my Twitter feed is now, in 1997, this man created a system which blah, blah, blah. Here's the top 10 tips for free on how you can achieve. And I'm like, no, this is not. I come on Twitter to see funny animal videos and argue about sport. Okay, can we? You know what I mean?
If it's not a funny thread, I don't want to read the thread.
Don't be sending threads on Twitter. Need to go away.
Yeah,
they need to go away.
It depends. I quite like doing a fact check thread and walking through like the top 5 things I might have seen this week. And the top.
But that's a useful thread though. That's do you know what I mean?
Not a 25 tweet thread.
Yeah, it's not a thread of kind of here's 10 ways you can up your personal marketing and increase your personal brand by doing these top 10.
The word personal brand frightens me, right? I am probably someone who should not study for this because I went from being like a journalist and Like my personal brand is just all over the shop. Like I remember being an investigative journalist at the ABC, and I had to go to my boss and be like, I run this thing called the Sydney Rose, and I've got to go to Ireland for a month. Can I have a month off, please? And he was like, yeah. He's like, but this could really hurt your career because people won't take you, And he was right to a degree. He was like, you're a woman. People will not take you seriously as a journalist when you're wearing a big sash and a crown on your head. And I was like, yeah, that's a bit outdated. But he was right because, I did job interviews and people brought it up and it's been, tweeted at me in a derogatory way. And it was like, I was a journalist for 4 years at, really good jobs.
In which context was it brought up in an interview? Like a bimbo taking part in a pageant?
It was kind of semi-passive aggressive. It was, they're going through my career list. And I think a lot of people in Ireland just think I did the Rose of Tralee and then just rocked up working for television here and then became a journalist.
I always forget about your Sydney Rose stuff.
But yeah, I do too. You're like, I'm like, yeah, that was me. It's so long ago. And again, I'm neurodiverse. So like whatever happened yesterday,
it's gone.
It's gone. Like it's out of my head. Like that's it. So yeah, I was in a job interview and someone said, oh, like, so what was the Rose of Tralee about then? And I was like, what do you mean? Like I was still a journalist. I were a qualified journalist. I did print, I did every medium you can think of. But it was sort of seen as like, oh, why do you do that thing then? And I didn't really understand that reputation about the Rose because I grew up in Sydney. And I just thought, great, so someone's giving me a free holiday, get to take me nanny back to Ireland, happy days. I didn't sort of think beyond that. But then I started working in television and it was like, well, what's your personal brand? I'm like, I'm a journalist. Like I don't have I have a job. I don't have a personal brand. And that was very naive going into it. I think I needed to kind of, I had people be like, oh, you should dye your hair blonde and blah, blah, blah. And all this stuff. And, I think you do have to play the game a certain bit in Irish media, I think in all media to get ahead. And I did not play it very well. So.
It's like that though in my job as well. Like if you want to progress and you have your half yearly meeting or whatever, it's always like, how's your personal brand going? Sorry, what?
What?
Yeah. You need to expose yourself a bit more on LinkedIn and Outlook and stuff. And no, go away. I'm okay.
Yeah. The second any employer starts telling you that you need to start doing stuff for social media, you're like, if I'm not in a marketing role where I need that stuff, leave me the fuck alone.
Yeah. Like we in my job, we give out these kind of they're called what are they? I can't remember what they're called, but they're kind of recognition awards. And not to downplay them, but I mean, if you do well once or twice in a week or 2 week period, you will get one. And some of the people now are resorting to putting that award on their LinkedIn as oh look, I'm so happy I received X, Y, and Z. Like, it's crazy.
So weird. I resisted entering journalism awards for years, and I was really stupid. I was like, I actually should have entered that, but because I was so afraid of being people like thinking, well, who she is. So maybe there's a happy middle ground of going for stuff without being a know about it. Tell me when you figure that one out, because something that
I didn't think you had to apply for these things though. I thought it was just whoever runs the awards ceremony recognizing people.
I think there are some awards that do that. I think there's others that they, their whole shtick is to get people to nominate, so then they get people into the award ceremony, which is where they make their money.
And just for a shindig, like.
But pretty much, yeah. But I mean, like as a multi-winning podcaster, a multi-award-winning TV personality, I don't know, and I'd never dream of promoting these kind of things. But my mantelpiece is laden with awards for what it's worth. Put that on me LinkedIn.
Oh, you're such a prick. So, Brianna, you're at the journal now. What, 7 months?
Yeah, I started November 20. Left Virgin started.
Oh, so 9 months.
Yeah.
And you're enjoying it.
Yeah, it's a lovely bunch of people to work for there. It's a really kind place, and people really mind each other, which is nice. Sometimes newsrooms aren't always like that. To a degree, I worked in some more traditional, maybe like, I want to use the word blokey, but that's kind of maybe not the right word because it's gendered, but it was like it was a lot of banter. It was competitive, not in a malicious way. Like people wouldn't purposely fuck each other over to get ahead. But it was like it was about, bringing the best story that you could and fighting for that front page spot, or fighting for to lead the news or to lead the show. So yeah, it was much more sort of combative environment maybe. But yeah, the Journal is it's a good place to work. There's good journalists there. They're not afraid to, I guess, experiment with new mediums. They've got great podcasts. They're kind of, moving in directions of being able to tell different stories. They do a lot of great international coverage and a lot of great EU Parliament coverage, which maybe other outlets don't have the space and time for. So yeah, they're a pleasure to work for. I'm pretty happy.
So it's a lot different than getting up at 6 a.m. to do a piece to camera with cows.
I like 4 a.m., it's
6 a.m. is a lion.
Yeah, so that did actually, I was really shocked because I just worked mornings for 3 years, that when you leave that, a lot of sort of things that I had wrong with my body and health issues I had just went away.
Wow.
And you don't realize how much shift work. And I had a friend leave at the same time. She went over to News Talk to produce a radio show, and she was the same. She was like, wow, you actually don't realize how much of a toll that takes on your body. And shift workers will tell you the same thing. It's, you come home, you can't really sleep in the day, and then you're just walking like a zombie. And then I'm getting calls at 3 p.m. to go and do the next thing tomorrow. So you end up kind of working like almost a split shift, and you never get to switch off really. And it's hard to go to sleep knowing you're going to wake up, really early in the morning. So you're always freaking out that you're going to oversleep. So I used to wake up on the hour, every hour, check my phone, go back to sleep. It was difficult.
Lovely.
That is
better quality of life out of you now.
Yeah, like I enjoy sleeping in the same bed as my partner, because it wasn't fair to wake him up all the time. So we started sleeping in separate beds, and I just find that really miserable.
Yeah.
So it's nice to sort of, get a little bit of my life back.
Yeah, Easy now, he doesn't snore, so I've been kicked out of bed for snoring plenty of times, and my wife will be like, I'm delighted that I got to bed to myself last night. So
yeah, you don't mind the odd like holiday, like I do, like you spread out and it's like, oh man, the bed's actually cool, like this is great. But yeah, every day that was tough.
Yeah, I know, I'd say so. But look, great to hear that, it's going well for you. The Journal does sound like a good place to be. And in fairness, the work they produce is always not just from their breaking, but like the noteworthy stuff, obviously the fact-checking stuff as well. And the 42 as well is always good sport-wise. So yeah, congrats on that one. And wish you all the best with whatever comes next with it, because there's going to be a shitload of stuff that needs fact-checking. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
It's never ending, and it's tough when you're, other team members do fact check on top of their other responsibilities, but I'm the only one doing it full time, and it's like, oh god, there's so much to do. And then you get people tweeting you like, why didn't the Journal fact check this? And like, because it's one of me.
Can you send it to me on LinkedIn? I'll get to it sooner.
Yeah, contact my LinkedIn.
Yeah,
I'm going to do a plug. Please send in fact checks to us. Sometimes things can happen on regional radio that I can't necessarily access up in Dublin, or I don't have a playback for certain things, maybe certain local newspapers. I try and monitor stuff as well. But if you're particularly in the regions, send me through stuff. We have a fact check email. We also have a fact check Twitter account. You can be completely anonymous depending on what you're sending us. So yeah, send them through.
Where do they send them?
I read this out. So you can send it to me. So I'm Brianna, BRIANNA @thejournal.ie. You can also DM them to us. We have a fact check Twitter account. So just put in the Journal fact check into the Twitter search bar. You'll pull us up.
Amazing. Brilliant stuff. Brianna, it's been great catching up with you again. Thanks so much for joining us. And hopefully it's not a year or more again before we annoy you to come back on the podcast.
Great. I can't wait.
Try and get you and Aoife on at the same time, maybe the next time.
I don't know if you'd have enough time for that. Like,
yeah, it could be carnage. Actually,
I mean, yeah, we're fast and loose with these things. I mean,
could be a 2-hour special.
Yeah, it'd have to have a good amount of time. It's just us talking over the top of each other excitedly. Yeah.
Episode 300's coming up. It sounds like an ideal situation.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, Brianna, until next time, thank you very much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
The brilliant Brianna Parkins there joining us, and delighted she did. We won't do much of an outro, man, because we waffled for about 6 years in the intro. So
no worries.
Thanks very much, Brianna.
Yeah, other than to say thanks very much, Brianna. She's a brilliant guest. Always great to speak to her. Check her out on our Twitter and check out our fact check articles, and also previously her columns every Saturday in the Irish Times, which are gold. But yeah, that's it. We're back anyway. If you want to listen to us, you can go to wtspod.com, or you can search us WTS Pod in any podcast provider: Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, anywhere and everywhere you can get a podcast. He's at Danjo Murray on Twitter. I'm at Merrigan Mania. Until next time,
Clear eyes.
full hearts, cat loose, too sweet.